Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Starfield video. Bethesda have just released a new Into The Starfield video over on their YouTube channel, and it's got some awesome new details in it, including some stuff on character creation and backgrounds, that sort of thing, customization. There's stuff on joinable factions, there's stuff on companions, and a whole load of other tidbits of information besides. So let's jump into it and have a look at this thing, shall we? Okay, yeah, so brand new video on here. Things are just over 5 minutes long, and they've crammed a huge amount of information into there, so I am really looking forward to getting into this. There's some cool tidbits of information here that I am very excited about. There's also a whole bunch of new concept art in there as well, but I'm going to go over that in a separate video, kind of keep things to a sensible length, and we're going to focus today on the the stuff that was said rather than shown on screen more. Mostly anyway. But yeah, there's plenty of cool stuff here to be getting on with, so let's have a look at some of this stuff. So first off, we kind of know already that Starfield's going to be big on its immersion and player freedom and exploring the galaxy kind of vibe, or at least the corner of it that features in the game. And this is obviously going to talk about a bit more of that in this video as well, which is really cool. Talking about making it a living world and focused on basically the player creating and experiencing their own adventure and story and that sort of thing. Much like Bethesda usually do, in the sense that once you get out of that initial starting area, you kind of go. You know, you get that step out moment and the world opens up, and from there it's more or less free to go wherever you want, whenever you want, and do whatever you want. They're going obviously down that road, but obviously even bigger because new game, plus they're going to space. So very cool as well. Looking forward to that. So the first big thing they talked about is stuff to do with character customization. So this is not to do with how your character looks, although there's a tiny bit of that. It's more to do with the setup. So in Bethesda's previous games, there was either a certain amount of established background, or the character's background was kind of left alone for you to make up in your head, and then you go on from there. But it wasn't established in the game. You know, obviously you look at the Elder Scrolls stuff, you're a prisoner, and beyond that, anything that happened before, that's up to you to decide in your own head, but it doesn't impact the game. In Fallout 4, you've got your pre-war background is kind of established. That's already there, and then you've got obviously the search for your son as well. And the same's true of Bethesda's other games as well. It's pretty much set in stone, you are what you are. In this case, they're going even further back to their early games and to stuff that's done in other RPGs, and embracing the ability for the player to kind of construct more of their own background that will actually have a role in the game, which is really cool. So talking about things like having an established background, having things like character traits. So exactly how that's panning out, we don't know yet. They haven't shared that level of detail, but they're a thing. So in all likelihood, you'll select certain personality traits, background traits, things from the character's background that then will affect your gameplay going forward and actually have a role in the game, which is really cool. It's something that's featured in a number of other games. Bethesda are talking about trying to do this in a new way and a more updated way. Obviously, these things evolve over time, and Starfield will hopefully be taking that on board and continuing that vibe tradition thing that happens in video games in general. So that's very cool. I also mentioned briefly about your stats as well. It looks like character stats are going to be fairly complex and will hopefully have a significant impact on the type of character you can build, and you can set up a lot of different styles of character, which is true of most of Bethesda's previous games as well. But it seems like they're really doubling down on that, or they seem to be implying that, which is really cool. I should say as well, as one of the cool things in this video is the enthusiasm that the devs are showing for the game. They look like they're really happy and excited about this game and really enjoying making it, which is not hugely surprising. You'd expect them to show that, but also in the sense that obviously this is their first entirely new thing in a very long time. They're breaking out, doing something new, and breaking the rut. Not to say that they're precisely in a creative rut or anything, but feeling like you're doing something new as a group of creatives has definitely got to appeal to them a lot, so I suspect they're enjoying it a lot from that perspective too. Certainly seems to be coming through that way in this video. So the next cool thing they were talking about had to do with kind of graphics and appearance and things like that, and in terms of the way they're building the world, they're using a technique that is apparently somewhat similar to photogrammetry, which is a really cool technique that other game developers have used to create realistic objects in their game worlds, or create realistic-looking game worlds. In terms of recent games I've played, Joinable is a good example. I'll throw some screenshots up of that so you can have a little look at how that game looks. And it basically involves taking an absolute metric ton of photos of everything, and then using that to build the objects in the game. How that is exactly going to pan out in a space adventure where the environments don't actually exist is an open question. So it did kind of sound like they're using a similar sort of technique, but not exactly that technique. So be interesting to see how that goes. But obviously the emphasis here is on both creating really immersive and realistic environments, and also characters and NPCs and player character as well, to make them as sort of realistic living, breathing vibe to really hype that immersion up as much as possible, which is really, really cool. Those to do transporting the player into their worlds very, very well. They always have done. And it looks like they're trying to double down on that even more for Starfield, which is going to be absolutely awesome. Definitely looking forward to seeing that and getting swept away in this space adventure. That should be really, really cool. So sort of growing out of that, one of the things Todd Howard has mentioned in previous interviews, and I can't remember if it was the preceding video to this one, but it was certainly in a previous interview anyway, was about NPC interactions in Bethesda's previous games, particularly looking at Skyrim. So, but other games too, in that characters have a habit of kind of just standing there staring at you and throwing the dialogue at you, and it's sometimes the phrase uncanny valley gets thrown around, stuff like that. And Todd Howard did express this desire to massively improve on that and really level that up so that the interaction with NPCs is much more believable, feels much more like having a conversation, that sort of thing. And it sounds like they really have embraced that concept and idea and goal in Starfield as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually pans out, but it's something that we're talking about in this video as well. So if NPC interactions and stuff like that can become that much more realistic, that's something Bethesda would certainly benefit from, I think, and it certainly Starfield would. And yeah, it's the NPCs, we all love a lot of the NPCs in Bethesda's previous games, but they're not perfect, so upping their game on that is definitely something I'm very excited for and interested to see how that's going to pan out. If they are successful, again, talking about the immersion, that would be a really, really wonderful way of drawing people into the world even more, rather than having them go, what the hell is that dude doing? And so if they can avoid that and really double down on that immersion, that'd be awesome. Of course, that's a good point to mention the whole occasional bugs that pop up in Bethesda games. I mean, nobody's ever heard of that happening. But yeah, obviously that will be happening. Big new project, massive, ambitious project as well, plus open world game. Just about every open world game made these days has its issues. Some more, some less, but they all have them. So I think we can expect there'll be a few in Starfield when that launches, at the very least. But yeah, aside from that, it should be very, very cool. So the next really, really cool thing they're talking about is joinable factions, which I don't know about you guys, but I'm really hyped for that idea. It's something Bethesda have done before in numerous games, but they're really embracing it again with this one in a really cool way. So we know a little bit about the United Colonies. They're the kind of space republic that is the big faction, the biggest faction, and the most well set up and established of them, so that's very cool. Sounds like we'll be able to join them. The Freestar Collective are more space western, is the term that was used in this video, which is really, really cool. Definitely somebody I'm very, very hyped to get a look at and interested in getting in there. There's definitely a Tatooine vibe to the Freestar Collective's capital world, Aquila, anyway. So looking forward to getting into that and exploring that one, which is cool, and joining up with those guys. Obviously, they're more personal freedoms and less about authoritarian governments, that sort of thing, in their style. So a different faction, very much opposed to the United Colonies in their outlook and philosophy, so that's cool. They talk quite a bit in this one about Xion Industries, which we've seen little hints of them in the concept art, and it sounds like they might be involved with Neon. I'm not entirely sure. I think Neon might also be its own unique corporation. But Xion Industries, on the other hand, is a faction that is a mega corporation. And they're mentioning here how you can join them, and it's apparently like applying for a job, which kind of makes sense if they're a mega corporation, really, doesn't it? So, yeah, the idea that you might join this faction in such an organic, realistic, in-world way by applying for a job and joining them is quite a cool idea. Obviously, that's going to be different again to the other factions. And the other major faction that they talked about in this video that we've heard mentioned in the past, but really, really cool to see a little bit more information coming about, is the Crimson Fleet Pirates. So we know they're a group of pirates, and they're somewhat antagonistic at least, but you can also join the faction, which is really, really cool. And they seem to be embracing the concept that you might want to join a faction, even though your character's personality and style might not necessarily align with the faction. So you talk about the Crimson Fleet Pirates, they're pirates. They're not a nice bunch of people, basically. It seems to be the implication anyway here. So what do you do if you actually are a nice sort of character and you got the opportunity to just join this massive group of pirates when they're not shooting at you anyway? Well, one of the things you can do, obviously, is side with them. One of the other things you could do is appear to side with them and report back to whatever other faction may be a part of, and sort of go undercover cop vibe to sort of read my own interpretation of the words that the devs used in this video. But that would be a really, really cool idea, and it's a way you could join a faction that might be, at least on the surface of it, opposed to your character's ideologies and stuff, but also have it work a certain way. It also sounds like, from that, and from other little snippets that are implied here as well, that there's a fair bit of conflict between the different factions. We've had conversations before about the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective having previously had a war. I believe the figure is some 30 years or so before the game is set. And obviously pirates, they tend to be fairly combative in nature. And as for megacorps, well, corporate takeovers or things like that are often not the most pleasant things in the world. Sometimes they're alright, but not always. So there's definitely an option for a lot of conflict there, and it sounds like the factions will be a little bit opposed to each other in varying ways from the sound of it, and that's really, really cool. You can develop some cool storylines and personal journeys and stuff like that for the character, depending on which way you want to take your character and what sort of player you want to be. So that's really, really cool as well. I'm definitely looking forward to diving more into these factions, and the goal with them seems to be to bring the world to life, which would be really, really cool, and obviously that's certainly something Bethesda have aimed to do in the past, and hopefully they can do it on an even bigger scale with Starfield. It certainly seems to be the goal, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. So, companions. I don't think we're going to be massively surprised by that. Most of Bethesda's games in recent history have had companions in one form or another. 76 is a bit of a weird anomaly there, but otherwise, the single-player games, of which Starfield will be one, is definitely something that has companions in it. And I know a lot of people are really big fans of the companions. They have their favourite companions. I know a few people who are massive fans of Kate in Fallout 4. Personally, she bugged me a bit. I also know people who quite liked Hancock. And we can obviously jump over towards Skyrim as well and look at people like Lydia or Mjol the Lioness or various other companions that you can pick up in that. So it sounds like they're taking this idea again into Starfield and going even bigger with it and trying to make them more part of your journey and part of the immersive world. And in Fallout 4, obviously, companions comment on what's going on around you, but they're taking that to a whole further level to embrace the immersion side of it from the sound of things, which is really, really cool. At least it looks that way anyway. So definitely down for that, and companions are definitely going to be welcome. There's a little hint here about Vasco, the robot that we've seen in the trailer, who appears on your spaceship. We get another shot of him here in the video that is really, really cool, and we actually get to hear his voice, which is awesome.
Hello, Captain. How may I be of assistance?
Very, very robot, very, very cool. I like that guy. It's kind of been hinted in the past that he may not be a companion in the sense that he can come out and join you on your adventures. On the other hand, it almost kind of hints here that maybe he is. So maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe he just stays on your ship, maybe he will come out and join you on adventures and shoot stuff alongside of you. Don't really know at this point. But it would be cool if he does. It's also conceivable that Bethesda looked at the reactions to that and then changed him so that he could do that. But we'll have to wait until maybe the summer, or at the very least when the game comes out in November, to find out. However, companions, very, very cool. Definitely good to hear those coming back, and interested to see what kind of people and that sort of thing, and beings, I suppose. Who knows? We haven't seen any hints of aliens yet, but that could be a surprise that's waiting for us later, that we might join with and have interesting adventures with alongside. It could create some very, very interesting dynamics. So, yeah, as will robots, incidentally. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing what Bethesda have got in store for us on that front. So, extending out from the companions thing, there's a couple of other cool things mentioned. Just dropped in passing, Emil mentioned the romance thing, which it was just a passing comment, but let's be honest, they've obviously gone over this video about 1,000 times before it came out, so they know everything that's in there. If they had a problem with that being in there, they'd have taken it out. So I think we can probably imply that there's going to be romance options in there. I think we'd be more surprised if there weren't, certainly with Bethesda's previous games in mind. But yeah, romance options in Starfield look to be a thing. As I say, only mentioned in very, very fleeting passing there, but very, very cool nonetheless. Definitely down for that. So the last cool thing that they mentioned in here that I want to pick on for now is the persuasion thing they were talking about. So dialogue has been a hot topic for Bethesda and their games, particularly over the last 10 plus years, to be honest. You go back to Fallout 3, people like that one a lot. Non-voice protagonist and plenty of dialogue options you pick from a list, and you actually get the dialogue that you chose, whereas you look forward to things like Fallout, well, even Skyrim, some of it was a bit iffy in places, and then you have Fallout 4, where they went with a more Mass Effect style, and people didn't like that, which is fair. I had my gripes with it too. But with Starfield, it looks like they're really going into immersion and that sort of thing with the conversations as well, and going for creating the feeling that you're having a conversation, which is definitely very cool. To that end, they are bringing back a form of persuasion system. Obviously, there are a few different variations on that sort of thing in Bethesda's previous games. Oblivion was the big one that was mentioned, although that had a really kind of gratuitous minigame that wasn't great. So, it sounds like they're not going with that kind of minigame. It also sounds like they're not going to go with, here's a speech option, click that one, here's your chance to succeed, or arbitrary stat check and you might succeed. Sounds more like they're going for a more organic vibe to persuading NPCs and characters of things, try and make it feel like it's built into a conversation. So the pathway to a persuasion is not obvious, necessarily, and it will involve kind of working your way through a conversation to persuade somebody. And if that's what they're doing, that'll be very, very cool. Definitely hype up that immersion, really bring you into the world, make the NPCs feel more alive. It'll be consistent with, as I said earlier, what Todd was saying about trying to bring the NPC interactions and dialogue a bit more to life and that sort of thing. So that would be very, very cool if they can do that, and hopefully bodes very, very well for the immersion in the game. One of the big things that is a bit odd on this one, though, is the video is called Made for Wanderers, and yet a lot of it doesn't seem to mention much wandering, which is interesting. So I think we can probably imply from both Bethesda's past games and from things we've heard before that the big thing is the exploration angle. That seems likely. The get out there, go where you want to go, when you want to go there, rather than having it handheld or be linear. There's a few mentions in there about the player creating their own adventure, which is very much the Bethesda thing, but in terms of actual hardcore detail on how that's going to pan out, there wasn't much. But I think we can probably infer from Bethesda's past and the title that the freedom to go where you want and to create your own story is very important. So surprisingly little details on that, more detail on specific systems and areas of interest, which is cool, but odd that they've titled it the way they had and not actually gone deep into that. But nonetheless, very, very cool, and definitely something I think we're all looking forward to, getting out there and exploring space. They do keep mentioning that what's out there line in terms of space exploration, and that's fair. That's basically the underlining drive between, well, getting out and exploring anything in video games, getting out and exploring space in video games, and even getting out and exploring space in real life. Because the whole thing behind NASA and, you know, to a degree SpaceX, people like that, is we want to get out there and see what's what and explore. So the fact they're embracing that is about what we'd expect, and definitely works with Bethesda's style of games, and is definitely something I'm looking forward to as well. So there we go, some really, really cool details, and I've managed to make a 5-minute video into a 20 or so minute video, so I do hope you guys are really interested by the stuff and find it informative and are as excited for Starfield as I am. Of course, I will be covering the living daylights out of this game up until its release, and afterwards as well. So if Starfield's something you're interested in, I'd love to have you drop subs and likes. I very, very much appreciate it. As I say, I'm going to go over the concept art in a subsequent video later on this week, so notification bell if you would like to, along with the sub button, and then you'll know when I do that one. And of course, ongoing Fallout content and live streams as well. If you would like to jump in on any of that, I very much appreciate it. As per usual, social media links and merch store down below as well. If you're interested in checking that stuff out, it's down in the description. There'll be a link to the Bethesda video that we're referring to today down there as well. And yes, as I say, join us for live streams as well. We have a lot of good fun playing a whole host of games, including Bethesda stuff and some stuff that's not Bethesda as well. So do join us for those. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.